My name is Eva. And before I say another word, I want to ask you something. Have you ever poured your whole heart, and every last dollar, into your family only to realize they only saw you as a wallet? Something like that has ever happened to you even once? Please tell me in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from too, whether you're in Georgia, Ohio, California, or sitting quietly in a small kitchen like I was that night. Because I need to know I'm not the only one. You see, I gave up my entire savings for my brother's wedding. Every dime. Every cent I had put aside for a rainy day or maybe someday for a home of my own. Gone. Because when my mom said, "Eva, be a good sister. Ryan deserves the best," I listened. I always did. I paid for the venue deposit, I helped with flights for our extended family, I even put in money for their honeymoon. I didn't ask for praise, I just wanted to be part of something that felt like love. But 2 nights before the wedding I was sitting alone in my room with my laptop open. I hadn't checked my balance in a few days. I wasn't expecting anything shocking, maybe a few $100s left. Instead, the screen blinked at me with a message I'll never forget. Available balance, $4.32. I froze. My chest tightened. I kept refreshing the page like maybe the numbers would change. And then I saw it. A withdrawal I never authorized, $6,800, vanished into some joint family fund I had never heard of. My fingers trembled. I walked out of the room holding my phone, trying not to cry. I asked my mom quietly, "Did you move money from my account?" She looked at me, smirked, tilted her head with that fake concern, then said the words that turned my blood to ice. "Oh Eva, don't act surprised. You're just the ATM in this family. Not the daughter." That was when I stopped breathing for a second. Not because I was hurt, but because I felt something colder than pain. Something steadier. I reached into my bag slowly, and whispered to myself, "Your laughter is about to end forever." And it did. Because just as their giggles started echoing through the hallway again, the door burst open with a bang. The door didn't just open, it exploded inward with a sharp crack that made everyone freeze. Even the laughter stopped mid-chuckle. People turned in their chairs, startled, confused. I stood still. And then he walked in. A tall man in a gray suit, neatly pressed, with a calm but heavy presence. My Uncle Terry. Most of the guests didn't recognize him. But I did. He was my father's oldest friend and a quiet attorney who never made a scene, unless he absolutely had to. He stepped in slowly, holding a large manila envelope in one hand and a small folder in the other. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. He gave me the smallest nod. That's when I finally exhaled. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to know how I got here. My name is Eva. I'm 36 years old. I've never been married. I work as an accountant at a private firm, and I've lived my whole life trying to be the glue that holds everything together. I was the responsible one. The strong one. The one who never asked for much. When my dad passed away 4 years ago, something in my family shifted. My mother, who once used to rely on me with soft eyes and kindness, suddenly saw me as a tool. Utility. My younger brother, Ryan, became the new golden child. He'd been jobless for years, bouncing from one startup dream to another. But Mom still pampered him like a prince. I remember her saying once, "Ryan just needs one big break. You'll help him get there, won't you?" And I did. Again and again. Even when it hurt me. When Ryan announced his wedding, I told myself this time it will be different. I imagined being treated with respect. With warmth. Maybe a thank you toast, or even just a seat at the table that wasn't near the restroom. Instead, they asked for more. They hinted that the venue needed a second deposit. That the flights were too expensive. That if I really cared, I'd pitch in just a little more. I drained my savings. I told myself I could rebuild later. But the night I saw that $6,800 missing, without even a phone call, and Mom called me an ATM, that night something broke inside me. Not my spirit, but the illusion. The one I clung to, hoping my family saw me as a person. So I made one phone call. To Uncle Terry. The man my dad once said, "If anyone ever betrays you, call him first." And now Terry was standing in the doorway holding the truth in his hands. He looked around the room. Confident. Then said something I'll never forget. "I have a few things to share. But I'll let Eva go first." I took a deep breath and stepped forward. I stepped forward slowly. My heels didn't click against the floor. The silence in that room was already loud enough. Every eye followed me, some puzzled, some nervous, and some like my mother's rolling with exaggerated boredom. Ryan was still holding his champagne flute, looking like the center of the universe in his designer tuxedo. His bride stood beside him, smiling nervously, probably wondering if this was some kind of surprise toast. I looked at them all. My family, my relatives, childhood friends, people who knew me as the quiet, dependable one. The one who always gave and never asked questions. But tonight, I wasn't here to keep the peace. I cleared my throat. "Thank you, Uncle Terry. I won't take much of your time," I said softly. "I just wanted to clarify something before we continue this celebration." Someone at the back chuckled, thinking it was a joke. My mother smirked and waved a hand like I was being dramatic again. But I kept going. 2 nights ago, I discovered that $6,800 had been taken from my personal savings account without my knowledge. And when I asked about it, my mother told me I was just the ATM in this family. Not a daughter. That sentence echoed in the room like a pin dropped in a cathedral. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of my aunts gasped softly. I turned toward Ryan. "I know you wanted a big wedding. And I wanted to help. But what neither of you realized was that I don't stay silent because I'm weak. I stay silent because I give people chances. Until they show me they don't deserve them." I nodded to Uncle Terry. He stepped forward and opened the envelope, pulling out printed copies of bank statements, with highlighted withdrawals, dates, and login locations. His voice was firm as he explained each transaction. Then came the kicker. "I also have a signed affidavit from the financial institution confirming the IP address used to make the transfer, which matches the home network registered under Ryan's name." Gasps now turned to murmurs. "But," Uncle Terry continued, "it wasn't just Ryan. The login was confirmed with a 2-step authentication from a number registered to." He looked directly at my mother, her cell phone. My mother's face dropped. Not all at once. It was like watching someone realize the floor beneath them wasn't real. "I didn't steal anything," she snapped. "This is all a misunderstanding." I smiled gently. "No, Mom. It's not. It's the clearest I've ever seen things." I reached into my purse and pulled out a flash drive. "This has the voice recording from 2 nights ago when you said I'd never find out. Remember that?" The DJ shut off the music. The bride sat down slowly. Ryan's hand dropped the champagne glass. It shattered against the floor. I turned back to the guests and said calmly, "I'm sorry for the interruption. But this wedding is built on theft. And I refuse to be the foundation." No one clapped. No one even breathed. I watched them squirm, my mother now standing beside the bride's mother, whispering rapidly, "Ryan." He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Not because he was innocent, but because the consequences had finally arrived. Terry stepped forward again and handed a copy of the notarized complaint to the groom's side of the family. "We've filed an official report. Given the financial misappropriation, this event is now under review. The venue was paid for using stolen funds. And as of this moment, it is no longer available for your use." You could hear the collective heartbeat of the room trying to make sense of what was happening. The bride's father stood up suddenly, red in the face. "Wait, you're telling me this entire wedding is cancelled?" Terry didn't flinch. "That is correct, sir. The ownership of this property was transferred 2 days ago to a charitable foundation. That foundation is not permitting illegal use. You may speak to your own attorneys, or perhaps your wedding planner, about recovering what you can. But this event is over." The air was thick with disbelief. Some guests started leaving. The photographer lowered his camera. A bridesmaid whispered something, picked up her purse and walked right out the side door. Ryan turned to me, his voice trembling. "Eva, please, don't do this." I just looked at him. "You did this, Ryan." "Mom. You thought I was so desperate to belong that I'd stay silent forever. But silence is not consent. And I'm not going to be invisible anymore." He grabbed at my arm, gently but desperate. "It was her idea. I swear. I didn't mean for it to go this far." My mother gasped from across the room. "Ryan, how could you throw me under the bus like that?" "You told me to do it," he yelled. "You said she'd never check her account." They were unraveling in front of everyone. Every smug glance. Every fake compliment. Every whispered insult I had smiled through for years. It was all crumbling in real time. I turned to the guests. "I don't expect applause. I don't want pity. I just wanted truth. And if that ruins the fantasy wedding you all came for, maybe it's time we stop worshipping appearances and start respecting people. And with that, I walked toward the exit, passing tables full of stunned faces and half-eaten appetizers. Terry followed behind me quietly. We didn't need to say anything, because what needed to be said had already changed everything. Outside, the air felt cooler than I remembered, like I had been underwater for years and finally came up for breath. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. There was a strange stillness in me. Not peace exactly, but something stronger, clarity. Terry opened the car door for me and I slid in without a word. As he started the engine, I looked back through the window and saw people still standing near the entrance of the venue. Some staring at their phones. Others just staring at nothing. He glanced over. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "Better than I've been in years." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Your dad would have been proud. You know that, right?" That caught me. Right in the chest. I turned to the window so he wouldn't see my eyes fill up. Because that's the part no one ever talks about. Revenge doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it feels like closing a door you should have locked years ago. The drive was quiet for a few minutes before I asked, "Did you finalize the transfer papers?" "All signed and filed. The venue is now owned by your late father's memorial fund. It's a registered nonprofit now. Proceeds from rentals will go to scholarships for young women in finance, just like you wanted." That made me breathe deeper. Finally. Flashback 2 weeks earlier. Me in my small kitchen, eyes swollen from crying, staring at my laptop. I had just overheard my mother and Ryan planning how to drain my account, just one last time. That's when something inside me clicked. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I made a plan. First I called Terry. Then I began collecting everything. Bank statements, text messages, voicemail backups. I took screenshots of conversations, saved them in cloud folders, timestamped everything. I checked state law on unauthorized withdrawals and financial coercion. I filed a quiet fraud report. I even contacted the venue and asked to schedule a private meeting. And finally, 2 days before the wedding, I purchased the venue, using a clause in the contract that allowed private acquisition if the original payer became the sole financial contributor. Me. I didn't destroy the wedding. I just returned what was never theirs to begin with. Back in the car, I pulled out my phone. Messages were already rolling in. From guests. From cousins. From strangers online. One said, "I was at the wedding. You have no idea how many of us saw you for the first time tonight. You weren't the A-team. You were the only one with dignity." Another simply read, "Thank you. You gave me courage." I closed my eyes and let the tears finally fall, not out of sadness but out of release. They had planned a wedding using my money. But I had planned an ending they would never forget. 3 days later, I was sitting by the lake at a tiny Airbnb 2 hours outside the city. Just me, a kettle of tea, and the sound of birds that didn't care about drama or betrayal. I had turned off my phone for a full day. When I finally powered it back on, it buzzed for almost 5 minutes straight. Calls. Voicemails. Messages. A few from people I hadn't heard from in years. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I scrolled through the local news app. The headline popped up almost instantly. "Bride abandoned at wedding after groom accused of bank fraud. Family drama unfolds on site." There was a blurred photo of Ryan looking stunned. And another of my mother being ushered into a car by a woman in sunglasses. The article quoted unverified sources, who said that the groom and his mother were being investigated for financial theft and cyber intrusion. It mentioned a whistleblower, me, but didn't name me directly. I took a sip of tea and kept scrolling. Comments below the article were wild. "How do you steal from your own family to fund a wedding? Respect to whoever blew the whistle. That's what real strength looks like. Reminds me of my aunt who raised her siblings and got stabbed in the back later. People need to hear more stories like this." I sat with those words for a long time. Not because I wanted validation, but because I finally felt seen. That night, my phone rang again. This time it was my mom. I didn't want to answer. But I did. She was crying. Her voice cracked like someone trying to hold on to a house already collapsing. "Eva, please. Can we talk?" "About what?" I said softly. "I didn't mean for things to go this way. I was just trying to help Ryan. He was so stressed. We all were." I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, "You didn't just take my money. You took my trust. And you turned me into a transaction. Eva, please." But I was done. "I think you should talk to the police. I've already said everything I needed to." I turned the phone over and placed its screen down. Later that evening, someone sent flowers to my cabin. No note. Just a small tag with 7 words handwritten in delicate black ink. "You inspired me to stand up too." I stared at that tag for what felt like hours. As it hit me. In all their cruelty, they tried to make me smaller. But by standing up, by refusing to be used, I had quietly become something I never expected. A mirror. And once you hold up a mirror, people can't unsee what they are. A week later, I walked into my office building with the kind of quiet confidence I never used to wear. The receptionist blinked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Eva, you're back?" she asked, smiling wide. "Everyone's been asking about you." I just smiled and nodded. "Tell them I'm better." When I stepped into the break room, a few co-workers clapped. It wasn't loud or performative. Just a simple, honest gesture. One of them had put up a small welcome back banner. There was even a cupcake with a little blue candle on it. Someone whispered, "We saw the article. Proud of you." Another said, "Takes guts to stand up to family. I couldn't do what you did." But the truth is, I didn't do it because I was brave. I did it because one night, in the middle of all that pain, I asked myself something no one ever had. What if I treated myself like someone worth protecting? And when I answered that question honestly, I realized I couldn't keep living like a background character in my own life. After work, I walked home with a quiet breeze lifting the hem of my coat. I passed a bakery I used to love but had stopped visiting because I was always saving money. For them. I stepped inside, bought 2 of my favorite pastries and sat at a corner table alone. And for once, I wasn't waiting for someone to join me. I was enough. As the sun dipped low, I opened my phone and looked through the gallery, not at family photos but the documents I had saved. The receipts. The bank trail. Then I scrolled past it all and found a screenshot I'd saved just 2 days ago. It was a text from a woman I didn't even know. She wrote, "Eva, I saw what happened at the wedding. I'm a nurse and I've been paying my brother's bills for years while he calls me selfish if I say no. I thought I was the only one. But you gave me permission to stop. Thank you." I stared at that message. And for the first time I really let it land. I hadn't just taken back my money. I had taken back my voice. The next morning I started making changes. Quiet ones. I opened a new savings account, titled it, "Only for Me." I cut off the auto payments linked to my mother's phone plan. I canceled the transfer I used to make every month to help Ryan catch up on rent. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I just stopped bleeding for people who never brought bandages. That weekend I visited my father's old grave. I sat under the oak tree beside it with 2 roses, one for him and one for me. I whispered aloud, "You told me once to be strong." I thought that meant being silent. But it means saying, "Enough," before you forget what your own name sounds like. I rested there for a long while, watching the wind move through the leaves. And I imagined Dad smiling, not because I had won anything but because I had finally learned to stop giving everything away. Later, as I drove home, a thought came to me so sharply I said it out loud. They laughed when they took everything from me. But I smiled when I got it all back and more. Sometimes the best revenge is reclaiming your name. When I got home, I took out my journal, a plain notebook with a cracked spine, and flipped to the last page. In bold black ink I wrote, "I am no one's A-team. I am not the background. I am not the fallback. I am not just the sister. I am Eva. And Eva rises." I closed the notebook, lit a candle, and finally allowed myself to exhale without waiting for something bad to happen next. That night, I slept with my phone on silent. And in the morning, I didn't check to see if they had called. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I had already given myself something better. Closure.